What is up? What's your why, listeners? Thank you so much for coming on today. Today's podcast is with Izzy Waite, one of my friends now for about 8 years or so. We did an internship together back in 2015 for the same organization, and then a group of us have kind of stayed friends ever since then. I look forward to you guys kind of hearing about how she grew up, growing up in sports, and having more of an obscure childhood with really unique parents that have ultimately has led her to become an entrepreneur and finding ways to succeed outside the standard method that most people are looking at in life. And so really good episode. I'm very happy she came on the podcast, and I look forward to maybe having her on again and maybe doing some business together for a website. Izzy, if you hear this, thanks for coming on. Everybody else, enjoy the episode, and if you like it, share it.
Fair enough.
Well, what's new?
That's like a loaded question because I don't even know the
Mm-hmm.
last time I saw you. When was the last time I saw you?
I think it would
Like,
have been when we were drinking at Skylar's apartment like 3.5 years ago, probably.
I was telling Skylar, I was like, I miss our little tradition when the four of us would
Yeah.
just get together. Like, we literally wouldn't talk all year. Well, I guess you and Skylar talk, and me and
Yeah.
Skylar talk, but like, I don't know if anyone actually talked to Keely. And then the four of us would always just get together. Uh, I miss that. We should do it
I
again.
think Skylar did. But I
Probably.
think she's still in Pennsylvania.
Is she really?
I think so. I don't know if see we need to get in contact.
You know,
We need to be better
we
friends.
need to do a big group Zoom call and catch up with everybody. But
Exactly.
so I guess since 3 years ago, a lot's new. I live in Rochester now. I
Yeah.
work for myself. What about you?
Um, a lot as well. You know, moved to Ohio, moved back to Fargo. Um, did grad school, coached at a few different CrossFit gyms. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of stuff. Worked for a friend right now. Yeah.
In
So
shipping something?
shipping, yeah, it's like freight shipping. It's nothing too riveting for discussion. Unless you're talking to my boss, you like it's the coolest thing ever.
Fair. Do you love it though?
Some days I do, some days I don't. It's some days sales is just kind of hard. Some days it
Yeah,
can be like super fun. So it just kind of varies on the day. But
that's fair.
yeah. Um, let's try to understand Izzy. So we're gonna go way back.
Oh,
Um, and
okay.
so I like to kind of understand where somebody came from and like how so like the listeners can understand like how you became who you are, like what things early on in your life kind of made you or pushed you down the path you're on now.
Boom,
So
like a therapy session.
let's
Let's
go early.
go. Okay.
Early Izzy, wait, what was like your early childhood like?
Early childhood, it was great, honestly. My parents are the most phenomenal people I know. Truly, truly. And like, I know a lot of people say that, but I think I was raised really in a cool way because my parents um are very weird. And they'll be the first to also admit that. But it was great because I never like had that, like I never looked up, and I realize this now because like I know a lot of people in my position that their parents were quote unquote normal in society. And I see
Mm-hmm.
that they struggle a lot being like, oh, I can't step outside what society thinks because that's not okay. Whereas my parents raised me that like anything goes as long as you're happy and you can kind of make it work. Like very unconventional. Like my dad cooked, which I know a lot of people that their father was not the cook in the house. My dad started his own business when he was in his 20s and then went bankrupt and then went back to college and then became the vice president of a construction company. And my mom worked cutting down trees with chainsaws and that was her job. And so like my parents are just like super unconventional. And so childhood was great because I was just raised with these standards that society, you don't have to listen to what society tells you is normal. So I give a
Mm-hmm.
lot of credit to them. They're great.
That's awesome. So
Mhm.
where are you from?
I'm from West Fargo, North Dakota, the lovely
Okay.
town, the best of Fargo.
The best of Fargo. That's debatable.
Yeah.
Um, but you didn't did you live in like the house in Northwest Fargo your whole life, or
No. So, well, I guess where I was born is Fargo.
yeah,
Like in small down, I don't know, like inner in the
uh-huh,
actual town of
yeah,
Fargo. And then my dad built our house when I was in elementary school. So then we moved out to like the country and had a little bit
hmm,
more space. So yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
So growing up, did you spend a lot of time kind of like being outside, or were you playing with like your sister, your friends, outside? Were you, what was like your childhood like for like activities and whatnot?
Yeah. We were like the weird wilderness children growing up. And like, if you can imagine like a little kid running around barefoot covered in dirt, like that was me. Me and my sister, we spent the summers like hanging out, just the two of us, because it was really hard for friends to come hang out with us because we lived
Hmm.
outside of town. And so a lot of my time was spent with my sisters and my neighbor kids. But yeah, we were always outside. One of my earliest memories in the house that I actually consider growing up in, which is the one out in the country, it's like my mom just coming to find us, screaming at us because me and my sister are literally covered head to toe in mud, like black, nasty smelling mud, because we decided that painting ourselves in the pond behind our house was going to be a really fun activity. But then we had to get in the car and go places. And
Oh
so,
no.
yeah, we were always outside. And like to my family, like a family vacation wasn't going to like Disney World, it was like going to the national parks and camping and
Hmm.
stuff. And so outdoors are always a huge part of my life for sure.
Gotcha. Um,
Mhm.
I remember like two very similar stories to that. Like we had this, we called it the frog pond, and it was a
Yeah.
drainage for the golf course uh right by our house, and we always just catch frogs there, but it smelled like shit. And
Yeah.
then one day I got pushed in there by like our my neighbor, and I came home in black mud and smelled awful. And my dad was like, "You're getting hosed off outside."
Frog
But
kids love frogs. It's
oh
the
yeah,
favorite. Be like running around with like toads in my hand.
we used to collect turtles on the golf course. I don't know how
Nice.
we never got told to leave the golf course, because we would just be along like the water barriers out in Oxbow, and
Yeah.
then we'd just be like, people hit over us, it's fine, you're not gonna
Oh
hit
my
us.
gosh, you could have been
And
killed with
then,
a golf ball.
well, like the chances of getting hit are like so rare, and like they're also trying not to hit where we are because we're in the water. But
Oh, same.
we never got hit. Probably a couple
Thank
close
goodness
calls
for
that I don't
that.
remember, but it's whatever. Um, yeah, it was always a good time. I always look back on those memories of like chasing frogs and filling our fish tank with pond creatures.
Yep,
Um,
that's true.
to be some of like the best days.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to go back and run around barefoot and play in the mud with the toads again.
Hmm.
Maybe we just should, even though we're
We still
adults.
can.
It's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a pond right out front of my apartment, and my dog got loose one time, and like he always looked at it like, I want to go in that water. I want to go in that water, but never let him.
Money.
And he got in the water, and it was like an hour to get all the mud out of him. It was so bad. He was rolling around, and it was 2 summers ago. So it was like during the drought, but there was just barely a little bit of water to keep the pond super slick and nasty. And oh,
Mm.
he was disgusting.
Yeah, but
But it
I
was a
bet
good
he
time.
was one happy pup.
He was
I bet
so
that was the
happy.
highlight of his day.
Oh, absolutely. And then he had to sit at home while we went to work. So yeah, it was kind of sad. But
Oh.
yeah, it was I remember those days being like super fun.
Hmm.
Um Now, like growing up, did that continue like throughout elementary into middle school and high school, or how did like getting into sports and whatnot, did that kind of change your focus a little bit more?
Yeah, kind of. I don't know. I still always love the outdoors and still always loved like camping and stuff. If
Hmm.
anything, I probably just kind of stopped. Actually, that's not even true because one time when I was in high school, I had like all of my girlfriends over. There was like six of us, and we had like a straight up mud fight in the same pond. So I don't think I ever outgrew that.
Yeah.
It'd probably be something I would still consider doing now if, the setting was right. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I outgrew that. But I think I just like I carried my strangeness maybe into high school.
Mm-hmm.
I always like I don't know. People will debate this, but like I never say like I was like a popular girl in high school. Like I just wasn't, because I was always kind of a little bit weird and like a little bit not exactly what everyone would think. I don't know, maybe when they saw
Mm-hmm.
me, especially like playing volleyball or track, like when I really got into sports, like I feel like people often like looked at me like I was this competitive B word. I don't know if we swear on this
You can
podcast,
swear on the
but
podcast. Yeah.
but like I feel like I gave off that look a lot. But then when people got to know me, they'd be like, "Oh no, this girl's a little strange." But I don't know. I was okay with it.
Yeah. Everybody, like, if you're unique, it can be a weird thing in high school. But
Yeah,
I don't know. When
mostly.
you started sports, did that change like kind of who you were in like competing more, or did you always kind of have that competitive mindset?
Hmm. I don't know. I think that I probably always was competitive. I think like to me being competitive, I okay, let me rephrase this. I think I'm the least competitive person out there. Like I am so competitive at the things I love, but anything else, like I don't really care about. Like I can really turn it off. Whereas I know some competitive people
Mm-hmm.
that are like competitive across the board. Like if you're playing Monopoly, they need to win.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, like being competitive was like just wanting to be the best at the thing I loved. And like growing up, like volleyball and track, like those were two things that I loved. So I wanted to put all my effort into them and like be the best. Um, so I don't know, like I was competitive, but also not in like the sense of like normal competitive people. Like I just wanted to be
Yeah.
really good at the things I liked
I
doing.
get that a lot
Yeah.
for the things that you want to be competitive in. And I was never like super athlete by any means in high school for football or track were my two sports.
What? Yeah, you
And
were.
no, 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 definitely not. Like I didn't start football until like my senior year, which is kind of like the average thing. And then and I was like 150 pounds as our center, which is like a very small center. And then so that always was a struggle. But then the things I cared about was like the weight room, like Olympic
Yeah.
weightlifting and kind of our FFA stuff. And that like we were super competitive at that. And I was super competitive at that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I enjoyed doing like football and track and eventually coaching track. I got way more competitive with my athletes when we had
Mm-hmm.
like more stake in it that way. But I
Yeah.
can completely agree. Like the things I don't really care about, that I don't really compete as much. I have a coworker on his LinkedIn. He says he's an avid competitor and everything he does, he competes in. And
Yeah.
so
Some
it's just a
people
little over
just
the
can't
top.
turn it off. I've learned that recently
Exactly.
and it's crazy.
Hmm. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that like I'll compete when I'm passionate about, what I'm happy about, what like makes
Mm-hmm.
me happy to compete at for sure. I
Yeah.
think it might just be the thing of trying to be the best at what you care about.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that
Yeah.
for sure.
Um, so getting into high school, actually, let's go back to school. Uh, Elementary school, middle school, did you really like going to school? Were you like a good student or?
Mm, kind of. I don't know. I like was, but I wasn't really. I just like didn't I didn't really know how to apply myself, and no one had ever like taught me. Like I didn't
Mhm.
really get good grades, and my sister is super smart. My sister is like the smartest person I know to this day, and she got good grades without ever like doing homework or ever doing anything. And so growing up, I didn't know that like you were supposed to do homework or study because growing up I watched her and she didn't have to, and she would always get perfect grades.
Yeah.
So it took me a while. When I was in middle school, I started this thing called Avid. It's a class
Mhm.
in some high schools that kind of like it's like a college preparatory class, and it teaches you how to apply yourself and how to study. And so I started that in middle school, and actually, that was like one of the main reasons I ended up being really good at school, because it was like the spark where someone was finally like, oh no, you should go home and study and do homework and like learn how to be learn how to learn basically.
Yeah,
And so at first I really wasn't. I'm terrible at like all things spelling and grammar, still am, but I eventually learned how to apply myself, and I got better at school.
makes sense. I always like
Hmm.
the professors in college that would like spend the at least first half of your first day
Hmm.
teaching you how to learn and be successful in this class.
Who did
And
that? I never got that.
oh, I had like probably 6 or 7 different courses that did that. And then,
Really?
I was an education major as well. So like that played into
Uh,
it. But like the
yeah.
first one that did it was my Bio 151 class, like super
Really?
general, 300-person lecture. And he's like, this is how you'll be successful in this course and our lab. And that was great.
Mhm.
His TA was an awful educator.
Oh, I hate
Still the
that.
worst educator I've ever met in my life.
I
But
always felt
that's
like I was just
besides the
being
point.
tossed to the wolves, and you had to figure out what kind of class you were in, like very quickly.
Yeah,
Kind
I always hated that. It's like, why can't you
of.
support the kids in your class? Like they're taking your class to learn, not to fail.
Because then, how do you separate the weak ones out of the pack?
I suppose, there is
Mhm.
that, but the mindset of like a certain number of students should fail my class always drove me nuts. And like
I loved
especially
those teachers. Just kidding.
like being an educator mindset and like I like to call
Yeah,
myself a teacher educator. Like those people should not be professors. You should want
yeah,
everyone to do great. Or
probably. I mean, that's
yeah.
probably like the better way to look at it, but
Hmm.
to each their own.
Um, going into like when did you start doing sports like volleyball and track?
I have a very, 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 very core memory. I was in sixth grade. And do you remember like the announcements that would like ramble on throughout
Hmm.
periods? Yeah, so I was in sixth grade and they rambled on and they were like, oh, come grab a sign up sheet for anyone that wants to join volleyball. And I remember just like freezing and like running down to the office and grabbing a sign up sheet because like I knew from like when I was born practically, I knew that like I wanted to play volleyball and like that was the thing that I wanted to do. And so yeah, I like picked volleyball very early. I was like, yep, that's me. I want to play volleyball. And then track I only ended up doing because my sister like bullied me into joining the track team. And so I didn't start track until later, which is really funny, but yeah.
Was that like in high school or earlier than
I think
that?
it was, I think I started in eighth grade, so it's not like much
Okay.
later, but like
Yeah.
I just had like a real passion and a jump start in volleyball. And then she
Hmm.
bullied me until I finally signed up for track also. So yeah, just a couple of
Was
years
she
later.
an athlete as well?
Um, yes.
Okay.
Sadie's my sister. Sadie is an athlete in different terms. Um she doesn't care like going back to like being competitive at the things you care about. She just didn't care enough about track to like really apply
Hmm.
herself. So she was in track, but she wasn't like going to extra practices, paying like to go work out in the summers, things like that. Like she just
Yeah.
didn't do the extra stuff. um but she's like an athlete in alternative terms, like she's into rock climbing and skiing and
All
stuff
right
like
on.
that. And so she's an athlete, but just not like in the high school terms of being an athlete.
Hmm. That
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, the and those sports seem to be more fun now as an adult, anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she probably won out in the long run.
Yeah. Did she do those in high school? Like rock climbing and skiing and
Not
stuff?
really. She got into
Okay.
it a little bit later.
Gotcha.
So like college, like at
Yeah.
NDSU, that's where she went
As
to.
most people seem to do.
Yeah.
Um, when did you kind of think that you might want to do college sports?
Um, I don't think I ever thought that I wanted to, like realistically. I was not that great at sports until later. It's
Hmm.
just funny. I was like one of my college, or no, not college, one of my high school volleyball coaches, like one time when I was a senior at like the senior banquet, she was like giving a speech and then she was like, yeah, I remember when Izzy first came, I thought she was just a Bambi on ice. Like they thought I was just terrible because I grew 4 inches in 1 year. And so like
That's a lot.
very quickly, yeah, very quickly got tall. I did not know how to use my limbs. So like I wasn't good at anything until a little bit later in high school. And I was like quite poor at track because I just like didn't have the coordination. So it wasn't until like my junior year maybe my sophomore year a little bit, but
Hmm.
that I started really getting good. And then that's when like colleges started reaching out to me, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I could do this. This is kind of fun.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was ever like a I'm going to do this thing. It just kind of happened, and I was pumped about it.
My dog's wandering throughout this room here right now.
That's
I
okay.
took it.
I
I
love
took his
dogs.
squeaky toy away. But once you like kind of realize you wanted to be or potentially do college sports, maybe your sophomore year or later, um, was it always track, or it sounds like you had this big passion for volleyball?
Yeah, I did. I was like verbally committed to play volleyball in college my senior year. I was like almost to the point where I signed and everything. And I just like had a terrible experience my senior year with volleyball. It was really me too. Like my volleyball team just like didn't mesh, like we didn't get along, and like
Hmm.
I wanted to be so good because it's something I cared about. So I almost got really controlling and just had a really bad experience like with the girls. Again, not like it was their fault, it was really all of our fault.
Hmm.
And so when I got like through senior year, I was like, holy cow, like if I join a volleyball team in college, like I'm gonna have to deal with girls. I'm gonna have to deal with drama. And like
Hmm.
if you have classes, the whole volleyball team has to practice at the same time. And so you have to be really careful about like when you do classes and all this stuff. And I just like got to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't like I love volleyball with my entire heart and I love competing in with a team, but there was so many other aspects to volleyball that track didn't have, right? Like
Hmm.
track, if I wanted to be really good, like I didn't have to depend on a bunch of people. Like it was really like me and my mind. And I thought that that made more sense doing in college because I don't know. I had a hard time like depending on teammates because of like my experiences in high school. And so yeah, but it was really, 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 really hard. I like was mentally so confused about it for so long.
Hmm.
And I was also like, it was like an identity crisis at the same time, right? Like I was always Izzy the volleyball player. So going to college, like I had a really hard time letting go of that because I didn't know who I was going to be. But I remember this one girl in high school, like we were having a heart to heart at student council, at state student council in the hotel rooms. And she looked at me and she's like, Izzy, if you don't do volleyball, like you're still gonna be you. Like people are still gonna see that energy and like you, it'll just be a different capacity. And it was the first time I was like, oh, I don't have to be a volleyball player? Shit,
Yeah.
okay. And so it was really quickly after that that I like left that dream and switched over to track.
Okay.
Mhm.
At the same time, were you focused on academics at all, or were you mostly just like, I'm going to be athlete in college? Or because I know there's a lot of college athletes that just come to school to play football or run track or do their
Yeah.
sport.
No, like looking at where I am now, like, oh my gosh, I wish. Like I truly, truly wish that I wouldn't have cared so much about academics, which is so funny. You don't hear anyone saying that. But like
Hmm.
seriously, I stressed out so much. And like I was so obsessed getting a 4.0 in like my later years of high school and like even all through college. Like I needed the perfect grades. Which I look back now and I'm like, no one is ever going to see my GPA ever again, probably because I work for myself. So that was stupid. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, I cared way too much.
Well, I feel like I always talk about this like work capacity thing that individuals have, and one that's really hard for people to do, and like doing something like a sport or a very easy one that I think anybody can like think about is like climbing a mountain. Like it's hard, but the path is in front of you. You know where you have to go, and it's
Mm-hmm.
physically exertion will be there, but like there's not a whole lot of thought that goes into it. If it's just like a
Yeah,
simple uphill mountain, like
right.
take like climbing out of it, but it's very easy to like know the work and know what you have to do. Um, I feel like with school, you still have to put in like work, and it takes like work capacity out of you,
Mm-hmm.
and energy out of you, but it's a mental strain, and like having the work ethic to get like a 4.0, no matter what your field is hard.
Yeah.
And then like being an athlete on top of it. I feel like it sets people up for whatever they do is it's gonna come out to where whatever they put their energy towards, it's gonna be successful. Kind
Yeah.
of going back to like being competitive at what you're passionate about. Do
Mhm.
you see how that would help? You know, you have that work ethic from like pushing towards grades and like having a good 4.0.
Yeah, I think if anything, because I wasn't naturally good at school, like
Mm-hmm.
some people just are. Like again, my sister, like she was just naturally good at school, so she didn't really have to apply herself. But because I did, I like learned how to apply myself. And I feel like once you learn how to apply yourself, you can do that with anything, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing. And so like learning to study, learning how to like take the time to figure out what would make me successful in school, that in itself like just taught me that like no matter what I'm doing, if I want to be good at it, I just have to like try and
Yeah.
like apply myself. And so yeah, I mean, I don't regret getting good grades, even though I probably stressed about it way too much. Because like at the end of the day, that's probably what I learned. I don't remember like, I don't know, certain things on a history test anymore, but I do
Mm-hmm.
know what it takes to apply myself. And so yeah, for sure.
I definitely think that having the ability to work towards something is much more beneficial, and like having the work ethic to work towards something is much more beneficial than just having one skill or
Yeah.
being the person that's just really good at school naturally, because a lot of
Yeah.
times that's not going to transfer, or when you do get challenged, you're not going to have the work capacity to push towards it.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Like just learning how to accomplish something
Hmm.
is like you can take that anywhere as long as you like know that you just have to like push yourself or apply yourself, like that can apply to literally whatever you do the rest of your life. So yeah.
I think it also gives you a bit of humility, um,
Yeah.
knowing that you have weaknesses and then you have to work towards them instead of just
Oh
thinking
yeah.
that you're like I'm great at school, so I don't need to study. And
Mm-hmm.
no, that definitely I feel like can apply to anything you do. Whereas,
Yeah.
were you like a natural athlete, or did you have to work towards stuff quite a bit in volleyball and track in high school?
um I would say no. Because I don't know, it's kind of weird because like when I started my athletic career, I was so uncoordinated. It was ridiculous. So
Hmm.
I grew into it. So I don't know if like part of that was just because like I grew 4 inches and I didn't know how to use my limbs, but I wasn't naturally good at it because I had to
Hmm.
like work through that. So I don't know. My favorite quote like all through high school was hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Because I remember like
Yeah.
looking at a lot of people and being like, oh my gosh, they're just so naturally talented. Like they didn't show up to the weight room, they didn't show up to the 6 a.m. training sessions. Like I constantly in like the summers, I was going to like the weight training every day of the week in the
Hmm.
hot sun. I was like going to every volleyball camp I could. Like I was constantly trying to learn things. And so I would say probably no, but I tried really hard to look like I was naturally talented.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think I had this like really great advantage. Like I've never been a supernatural athlete,
Hmm.
but I've been going to the weight room since I was in second grade. Like
Wow,
that's what I
really?
remember. Well, so my dad was our phy ed teacher at Kindred, and then he
Oh,
opened the weight room every day at 6 a.m.
wow.
And so my sister and I, as far back as we know, going to the weight room is what you do every morning. And
Mm,
we started like
interesting.
really lifting when we were in like seventh grade. Um,
Wow.
but like that's just he kind of built that work ethic into us.
Hmm.
And the ability to wake up in the morning to go work out. Definitely lost it like when I started college. Like I always worked out in the afternoon or something like that.
Yeah.
But getting up in the morning, getting the workout in, and then just being physically active was something that was
Yeah.
like so ingrained in us.
Yeah.
And the hard thing that was hard to get used to and do on my own was waking up in the morning, because he just did it every morning. He's like, we're going, get up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so when you lose that push right away, it is hard to get up in the morning. And that took a long
Yeah.
time to get back to. But I'm curious. I'm always curious what I would have been like in high school if I wouldn't have had my dad to push us in the weight room,
Yeah.
because I don't think I would have gone every day, or that I don't think that would have been part of my life.
That's really interesting to think about. I know
Hmm.
some people, See, like my parents didn't push me at all. Like literally nothing. Like they would show up to volleyball games, they would support me, but like
Hmm.
nothing. Um, but and so everything I did, I solely did because I loved it, because I wanted
Hmm.
to be there. I showed up every day because I was like trying to get better. Whereas like I know a lot of, especially like college athletes who didn't even love the sport that they were playing in college. Like a lot of my friends actually quite hated the sport that they were doing, because and they had only got there because their parents were like pounding them to be good and
Yeah.
pushing them to go to the weight room and all this stuff. And so I don't know. I think about, if you loved it, you might have, but I don't know. It's, yeah, it's a weird thing. Like when
Hmm.
parents push certain students and others don't have that push, like who ends up loving it and who ends up just doing it because it's like ingrained in them. I
Yeah.
think about that a lot actually. It's really interesting.
Well, I think it definitely shows in the people who go farther with what they do tends to be the people who love it. Um, or just the people that maybe they're not the best, but they're just happy while they're doing the sport is the people
Hmm.
who love what they're doing. And I think you can see that in
Yeah.
any career as well. Like
Yeah,
somebody who
that's true.
shows up and doesn't, like maybe they'll think they'll hear the saying that like I don't have to go to work every day because I love my job or something
Yeah.
like that. Um, I think those types of people ultimately like are gonna go like much further. And
Yeah.
there's natural people who are just like respond very well to being pushed. That it'll be a different story, but
Yeah.
um, looking at uh choosing to do track, what did like your last season of track and field look like, knowing that you're going to play or at UND?
Oh, like as a senior in high school?
Yeah, yeah, like your last
Okay, okay.
season.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about my last season of college. That was a whole different story.
Oh, okay.
Last season in high school, I don't know, kind of weird. I actually had a broken foot my entire last season in high school that I just ignored because I was like, it's my last season. I got to keep going
Hmm.
anyway. So I competed at like like the last probably four meets of the year plus state with a broken foot. So I didn't do very good. And I think it was partly because my foot was broken. I don't know.
Makes sense.
So I don't know. I think I I don't know. I applied like a lot of pressure myself, and I remember being so mad that I wasn't doing as good as like I had done previously.
Hmm.
But also I had already signed to run track. I don't know. I guess it was just kind of like, I'm doing this. I cared a lot because I had never won a state title, which was like like in North Dakota. I feel like anyone who's like decent at track in like the whole country, like at least wins
Hmm.
the state title at track, but I never did. And so I think my senior year, I like really, 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 really wanted to win that state title. Didn't happen. Not salty about it though. So yeah, I guess I just like kept pushing myself, but I knew at the same time, like the whole season that my foot was broken. So it was kind of like I would like get mad that it didn't do good, cry about it, and then be like, oh yeah, my foot still hurts.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's probably pretty wild that you did still do the whole season. Also, I feel like your college coaches were probably pretty upset that you did.
Oh yeah, like I showed up like day one of college season with a boot still on because I had like broken my foot so bad. And my coach, like my college coach to this day, if we ask him, he'll be like, "Yeah, I did not think Izzy was going to be good in college because freshman year I was a wreck. Oh my gosh, I was so not where I should have been because of my foot. It was just
Hmm.
such an ongoing issue. That yeah, if he knew that I had finished that, and then I also played my all-star volleyball game that summer also with a broken foot. So yeah, I just like was stupid. Like don't
Yeah,
ever do that. Like if you're broken, just stop and take care of your body. But yeah, we're stubborn. That's a different
exactly.
story.
It's important to be stubborn at sometimes.
Yeah.
So now we kind of got to college here. Um, are you excited to be a student athlete, or like where's your mindset going into university?
Hmm. I think I was jazzed. I really do. I think college would have been a lot different if I wasn't in sports. I think I
Mhm.
loved it because like for me, like I automatically had a family right away, which was like so amazing. And like obviously I met my still current
Mm-hmm.
boyfriend, Tyler, like the second day on campus, he was on the track team. Some of my best friends are on the track team that I still talk to every day. And so, like, I think part of it was like, yeah, competing was cool, traveling the country was cool, doing all those things was great. But like the people that I met and like the family that I had, like the instant I stepped on campus was like the best part. And like, so track is like a winter spring sport, but
Mm-hmm.
we still sort of practice like the first day on campus. And so like having that like immediate, like, okay, these are my people, this is who I hang out with, was like the coolest part about it all.
Hmm. Makes sense. You know, it gives you something to one do. You know, you're still getting like that physical activity in, which undeniably helps with like your mental part of everything.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and then having that family has to be so important because at NDSU, like you saw football players hang out with football players, you saw the track team hang
Hmm.
out with the track team,
Yeah.
and that had to be, like it has to be such a big support. One of the guys I train with right now, like his best friends are his football team from NDSU.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think he graduated like 2 years ago, but like still, he went down there. He was heartbroken last week when they lost, and like that's his thing. But
Yeah. Yeah. You carry those relationships with you.
mhm. And also going into university, you had what was like your major? What did you want to do besides sports?
Yeah. So well, the internship that I had with you, I
Hmm.
was going into nutrition. I did that for a semester and I was like, what? Like, what am I doing? I'm not going to
Yeah.
tell people how to eat the rest of their lives. Like, love it. Still think it's so cool to learn about for myself and like think it's
Hmm.
such a cool career. But like, mentally, I was like, I don't think I can do that. So I switched, and it was actually Skylar, who is like both of our good friends,
Hmm.
who like one time was like, Izzy, you'd be a really good graphic designer. And I was like, oh, thanks, Skylar. And then like
Yeah.
immediately switched my major the next day. And like never looked back. Like I knew like graphic design was my thing. And I think I always knew that, but I think going into nutrition, I thought that was like the smart choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I did graphic design and then I also got a business degree in marketing because again, I tried way too hard in school and I really
Hey,
wanted
that's
to take
okay.
accounting classes.
You wanted to take accounting classes?
Yeah, apparently. I was like, graphic design's too easy. Give me all of the hard classes. And then I did.
Okay.
It's terrible.
That's, I did. I can't say too much about it because I thought my electives towards my senior year were too easy, so I took an extra chem and an extra biology class.
Okay,
So
that's
I
weird.
understand that. Yeah. I
Yeah,
took
I
them
like
as
didn't want to take the
electives.
easy route. Love making my life harder than it needs to be.
Yeah. Granted, I guess there was a little bit of like I was going to be a teacher. Like that was my original goal. And if I took those
Hmm.
extra classes, I could also be accredited as like a chemistry teacher or a biology teacher in a high school, not just an ag educator.
Mm,
So there, I
yeah.
guess there was like positive benefits down the road, which I never really used. So, unfortunately,
Yikes.
um, so you kind of found that the career path you liked. Um,
Hmm.
Going through university, what was your goal with that? Did you know what you wanted to do after you graduated?
I did. Did it pan out that way? Absolutely not. I like going into college or like once I was like, okay, I'm a graphic designer, I'm getting a business degree. Like I was like,
Hmm.
I'm going to run the corporate world and be on some like top tier, like hot shot designer, like walking down New York City. Like I was like, that is it. And then by like 10 years, I'm gonna open my own design firm and I'm gonna be like that, the girl who wears a suit every day and like is a designer. Like that's what I thought my life was gonna look like. Does it look like that? No. But I really strongly thought that I was gonna be like climbing the corporate ladder for the rest of my life.
When did that mindset kind of switch for you?
When COVID took over the world and ruined everybody's life.
Yeah.
That
How far along were
was
you
a
in
quick
school though?
little turnaround for me.
Were you graduated at that point or not yet?
I graduated in May 2020. So, because I did 5 years for track. And so, I literally graduated in the middle of the pandemic. And so, like,
Okay.
I had all these things lined up for post grad. And then COVID happened and I literally had to cancel all of them. And I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't have a place to live lined up. I was just like, holy cow. And I like quickly had to rearrange my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started working at this tech company right away out of college. And I worked with them for literally 8 months before I was like, this is not for me. COVID was really traumatic because like that was my last track season.
Yeah.
I had some like family deaths. Like it was just a really, really like mentally tough time. And then on top of that, I was like in this job that was like pretty much like asking us to work like 60 plus hours a week, not eat lunch, like just these crazy work-life balance and like culture that like was so unaligned with my values. And I
Mm-hmm.
lasted there 8 months before I was like, I don't think this is for me. And then I left, and now I'm here, still never working for anybody. So it's
Yeah.
great. Hmm.
Um, we talked a lot about athletics throughout this as well. So what was like after you got your boot off freshman year,
Hmm.
what did athletics turn to?
Um, well, the foot thing never went away. I literally still struggle with my broken foot. So if anyone takes anything away from this podcast, let it be that if you think your foot is broken, take the time to just heal it. So I like got my boot off, and then like immediately when I went to college, like had to get it back on for like another
Mm-hmm.
3 months because it just kept breaking. So I ended up redshirting my freshman year because of that. And I never really trained with the team a lot my freshman year because I was constantly like broken. And then my sophomore year, I was like finally healed. I was like taking care of myself, and athletics went great. I like did way better than I ever thought I was gonna do in college, and so that was really fun. Um, yeah,
What were your goals for with track and field? I feel like track and field is one of the sports where it's very obvious progression to
yeah.
like the Olympics, you could say. Did
Hmm.
you ever have aspirations of that?
Yeah, so originally I thought I was gonna do the heptathlon, which is 7 events. But then
Mm-hmm.
after you like break your feet, they're like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. And so I just stuck with my two favorite, which was high jump and javelin. Like high jump is the one I really, really took seriously, and then javelin was just kind of like to like take my mind off things and like have fun.
Yeah.
So high jump, my goal was like my goal from like high school was 5'6". I was like, I'm jumping 5'6". I never jumped it in high school. And then my sophomore year, I like jumped that and then raised the bar, literally like raised my goal. And so I think like my main goal I never got to because every time I jumped over a bar, I had another
Mm-hmm.
goal. But I would say like I was really, really happy with like the heights that I did jump. And yeah, it was cool. It would have been really cool to like go farther and like compete more and like do I don't, like West rounds and like make it to champions. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Also didn't have my last season though, so who knows how that would
Who
have
knows
turned
what would
out.
have happened then?
Yeah, but no, I think it was great. I
Mm-hmm.
look back at it very fondly, so I think I did well.
That's good.
Hmm.
Um, I know I don't like watching sports like in any way. But I like watching track and field. And
Really?
a lot of people don't understand that. Yeah. I honestly think it's because it's probably the sport I understand the most. And
Yeah.
so I understand the intricacies, I guess, a little bit more after coaching it and whatnot. But um I think it's a very easy sport to understand though as well.
Yeah.
Like
You run around a
you
circle,
give your
fastest one
all.
wins.
You jump your highest, you jump your furthest, you throw your furthest, you
Yeah.
um it's a very simple concept unless you get to
Yeah.
pole vault. Then it's a lot more difficult to
Oh,
understand, I feel
whatever.
like.
Then you just jump over a bar until you're the
Well, I
last
guess if you want
person.
to, you can, in simplest terms, it's just like high jump. Yeah. But
Yeah,
going
that's
a
funny.
little
I
bit
feel like there's
higher.
always a little debate between pole vaulters and high jumpers.
What's the debate? I feel like the one's way more technical than the other.
No, you're wrong. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
Technically, you're wrong. No, pole vault does have a lot of technique. High jump also does, though.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't have technique, but
I could argue that it has more. See, this debate could go on forever
okay.
because high jumpers always think that pole vaulters like to pretend pole vaulting is the hardest track event, and then high jumpers like to be like, we're doing the same thing except for backwards without seeing the bar. So
When I always try to recruit high school kids as a coach, I always said, "Do you want to do like the most complicated and athletic event in track and field?"
You would say
Oh,
that.
100%. And then it got our best athletes. So there we go. I also thought I was the coolest coach. I don't know why that one was true, but because I wasn't. We had some really cool people on our coaching staff. But so you kind of finish up sports, and you're leaving the corporate world,
Mhm.
and you're mid pandemic.
Yeah.
Where were you at about around this time? Were you in Fargo? Were you in Grand Forks?
Yeah, I lived in my parents' basement
Okay.
after in college because again, I had to like rewrite my entire
Yeah.
plans. Also, I would like to point out that I finished college on the lowest point possible of all athletic careers, I feel like, because it literally COVID one day was like, just kidding, you're never gonna finish your track season. And so it was a really weird mindset.
Yeah.
Like college got ripped out so quickly and like sports got taken away so quickly. I never had like time to like mourn or like say goodbye to like this thing that had
Hmm.
literally been my life for 11 years. Um, so it was weird. So then I was in my parents' basement working for this company that like made me really sad, and I was still really sad about college and everything. So like, yeah, really mentally unwell and not thriving.
Had you started indoor season when
Yeah, we
COVID?
finished we finished indoor season and I
Okay.
was literally on the bus to my first outdoor track meet of the season when the NCAA canceled everything.
Damn.
It was fun.
Yeah. I remember being in California when everything shut down. We were on a trip to go see a friend at UC
Mm,
Berkeley,
nice.
and they we saw the cruise ship that had everybody like quarantine on it. So that was interesting. And they were let
Weird.
out while we were there. So that was kind of scary as
Mm,
well. But so you say you're at like a low state.
yeah.
Um, what did that look like in terms of like pursuing a job or pursuing your own thing? Did that just kind of make you settle for the first thing you saw, or where were you at?
Yeah, I mean the job that I got right away, like I thought I was gonna love it. Like I really, really, really did. Like I thought it was going to work out really well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it was also kind of like, yeah, I took the first thing that came to me because like nobody was hiring, literally nobody.
Yeah.
It was the pandemic, and I was a new grad, didn't really have a place to live yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it was weird. And then like Tyler, my boyfriend, who we had been dating for 4+ years at that point, was in
Mm-hmm.
Rochester, Minnesota, and so it was weird because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get a job and have to move or if I'm going to be remote, or it was
Mm-hmm.
so weird. Everything was crazy. So yeah, I took the first remote job that came my way because like I needed something. And then I moved down to Rochester and I was working remote for that company for a
Mm-hmm.
while.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then so did he graduate at the same time as you or no?
No, he only did 4 years. So he graduated the year before.
Okay. And so he moved down to Rochester the year before, sounds
Yeah.
like. Okay.
Mhm.
And then did he have his own place and you just moved down with him eventually, or how did that work out?
Yeah, this is the point in the story that I hate
Okay.
because I'm like super not the type of girl to like follow her boyfriend wherever. But that's literally exactly what he did. So yeah, he was down here. Um, we signed a new lease at a new place, and so we moved in to the new place when I moved down here. So yes, I followed
Well,
him down here.
I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. There's definitely worse things you could have done.
It hurt me. It made me cringe inside.
Well, being in Rochester, the Minneapolis, closer to Minneapolis, St. Paul area has to
Mhm.
have a little bit more exciting things to do compared to Fargo.
Yeah, I would say Rochester is actually really, really, really comparable to Fargo, like
Okay.
same size. So I mean, like there's things to do, but not as many. I don't
Hmm.
know. I don't mind it here. But also when I
Where
moved here, it was
is
COVID, so nothing was
yeah?
happening anyway.
Where is Rochester in like in location or in regards to like Minneapolis, St. Paul? It's south,
Yeah, it's like an
correct?
hour south.
There's a lot more things to do like nature wise down that way. I feel like though
Yeah, that's
compared to
true.
Fargo,
Yeah.
and so that would be a huge perk,
Yeah.
especially during COVID when the only thing you can do is go outside.
Yeah. yeah, I took a lot of walks
Mm-hmm.
during those
Yeah.
years, months. I don't even know how long COVID existed. Well, it
I
still
got
exists,
into
but
running a lot more at that time. I was like, well,
did you?
I can't go to my gym. So I was like, might as well just go for runs. And then I was like, well, let's see how much I can run a month. But yeah.
Yeah, I had two kettlebells that got a lot of attention those months
Hmm.
because I couldn't do anything else. So kettlebell workouts outside on my yoga mat is how I
Hmm.
survived pretty much.
I was glad the gym I was at in Columbus at the time let us raid the gym as coaches. So we
Oh,
had some
nice.
equipment because we were closed for like 3.5 months.
Yeah.
Um, Very similar shutdown to like Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And
Yeah.
then it was always a culture shock coming back up to Fargo because it was so much different.
Oh my gosh, I know. Like crossing borders. Like I was 6 hours away, because I was down in Rochester, and I was
Hmm.
like, it was like a totally different place. Like it was crazy, like how you could be so close to something, but like exist so differently during that period of time. Yeah.
For sure. And then I would have friends in Columbus who would talk about that Fargo because at one point Fargo had like or North Dakota had like the highest population for people sick or like deaths per capita,
Oh yeah, that was
and
embarrassing.
they were talking about how Fargo is in anarchy, and I was like, I was just
Literally.
there, and like it seems fine.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, it was crazy. I remember like my dad had like so many health issues, and I was like, Dad,
yeah,
if you leave this house, I personally will kill you. Like, it was crazy. Fargo was so scary,
yeah,
especially for elderly people.
and which is you think about it like can still be true
Yeah,
for like whether it's like mutated variants or stuff like that,
yeah,
but.
totally. Hmm.
So you're down in Rochester, and did you were still working remote when you moved down there, correct?
Hmm. Yep, for the
When
same
did
company at the time.
when did you quit that and start your own thing?
I wish I could say I quit. Um, we transitioned.
Okay.
Basically like New Year's Eve, literally on New Year's Eve 20, we were going into 2021.
Hmm.
So they called me into a meeting and they were basically like, yeah, we ran out of money for your position, and like we're just not going to keep you on anymore. And I literally like cried for like 2 hours. And then I was like, wait, I hated this job anyway. Like
Yeah.
this job was terrible and I was so miserable. I was like, holy cow, I can wake up on New Year's Day, not have this job, and like totally try to figure something else out. And so yeah, I did not plan on leaving. I had no plan on what to do next, but I left. Well, we transitioned apart from each other.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So you started your own thing though. How did that what has been the process of starting your own business?
Yeah, it was super cool. I always thought that's like I always wanted to work for myself. Like I always thought that was like a 10-year plan. And
Hmm.
then just happened. But right away I wasn't trying to start a business. Like I always say I accidentally started my business. I was actually just like I was freelancing and like traveling because like I was so mentally unwell after working for this company. I was like, I can't ever work for another company. Like business owners are all terrible, everybody's evil, and I just like I was so done with like the corporate, the rinse and repeat cycle of life.
Hmm.
And so I started freelancing because I had done a lot of internships and things, graphic designing, and so like I knew a lot of people that needed graphic design, so I was just freelancing. And it was like in that space that I finally had like some passionate, like heart-centered entrepreneurs like come to me and ask me to do like these different projects. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's like this whole other side to the business world where people are doing things because they're passionate and they care and they want to add good into the world. And
Hmm.
I was like, this is where I need to be. I was like, this is the side of the world that I've been waiting for. And so I said, screw it. Well, I thought it was temporary, but I was just like, okay, I'm done working for the corporate world and I'm going to lean in and continue to like do graphic design for these people. And then eventually it like got to the point where I was like, oh, I could probably do this full time. And then I started my design business and there I am.
Right
Mhm.
on. And
Yeah.
so it sounds like it started working out pretty good right away. Is that accurate or not really?
Yeah, I mean, it's like with anything, like there's rocky
Hmm.
times and there's ups and downs. But even during the downs, I always just like think about like it's so freaking cool that I can do this. Like I can help people that are doing good people. I can get up and leave and go hang out. Like in 2 weeks, I'm gonna go spend 2 weeks working from my friend's apartment in California, just because like I can work from wherever I want to go. I can like set my own hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like I feel really, really grateful that like I have a skill set where I could easily like transition it to just working for myself. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's not always perfect though. Like starting your own business is freaking hard and there's so many things that nobody tells you and there's so many times that you just like cry because you have no idea what you're doing. But also it's like really, really rewarding and there's hard days with anything, so it's worth
Yeah.
it.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What has been like your hardest struggle so far of starting your own business?
Mm-hmm. I think just like managing it all. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
just so much to do. Like you have to be a social media manager for yourself. You have to answer emails. You have to figure out how to pay yourself. You have to figure out how to file taxes. And like there's so many things and so many different things that you have to be in charge of and have to make sure you do. So honestly, it's just that. Like I remember like the first year I was like in business, I like Googled constantly, like like how do you open a business bank account, like it's just like things like that that you don't think about but you need to quickly figure out. So
Yeah.
like yeah, that was definitely the hardest, like just figuring out like the small little business things and like making sure I had everything like checked off.
Did you said something right away, kind of about your parents were outside the box of normal parents, and your dad was an entrepreneur, and was ended up being successful still after like a business kind of failed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that mindset allowed you to really push into being an entrepreneur yourself?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I think like a lot of kids grow up just thinking that the only way we can do this is if we jump in the business world and like get a normal 9 to 5. But because like I had my dad as an example, and like even though he like failed at his business, like he still ran it successfully for a few years, and he still ended up being able to take those experiences with him and be really successful. And so I think like yeah, just having my dad, and my parents were so supportive, and so was Tyler. Like everybody in my life was just so supportive. And I remember like when I started freelancing and I was talking to my parents and Tyler, I was like, I think I could really do this full time. And all of them were just like, yeah, obviously that makes the most sense. Like, why would you even try and look for a different job right now? Like they like, and I was so shocked because I thought everyone was gonna be like, you need to go do like what everyone like what the world
Hmm.
thinks you need to do, like all these
Yeah.
shoulds that society tells you. But no, like I was so lucky that the three of like the most important influences in my life were just really
Hmm.
supportive.
That makes sense. That's cool.
Yeah.
Now you talked at one point that you like, I want to like run the corporate world. Do you ever have aspirations of like having a company, like a full company with a bunch of employees?
Mm. Yeah, I thought you were going to say, do I have aspirations to go back into the corporate world? And then I was going to laugh because no. But I think I
I
could
didn't
start
think
my
so.
own business and like have employees. Like that's something I think about right now is like, okay, at what point do I start hiring on? And like,
Hmm.
I love people and I love mentoring people. And so like, I'm super excited to get to the point where I can like mentor a younger designer or like just bring in people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think about that a lot. I don't know what the point that will be, um,
Hmm.
but one day, maybe.
Do you think you'd have to hire a second designer or like somebody to run the finances and the background work first,
Mm,
so you could like focus more on the
yeah.
actual designing more?
Okay, so like outsourcing is a thing, but I already kind of do that. Like the things that I don't like to do, I outsource and
Hmm.
I like just hire someone to do them. But like I don't consider them my employees.
Yeah.
Like I have paid someone to help me with my finances, or I paid someone to
Hmm.
help me um do things. So I don't know, like I've done those types of things. And yes, if I could hire someone full time to solely pay attention to my finances and my taxes, I absolutely would. So maybe that's something I do. But I
Yeah.
think like when I think of like having an employee, I think like the first person I would actually like bring in to like work for Izzy Waite Design full time would probably be another designer or like someone else that could just help me on my team like that. I don't
What
know.
kind of
We'll see.
projects do you work on? Or
I
is it a little bit of
specialize.
everything?
No, well, sometimes I still take fun projects, but most of the time nowadays I do branding and website design. And so I'll like help people establish their logo and that
Okay.
kind of stuff that businesses need and like get their colors and their fonts and all that stuff organized. And then I do website design.
Right on. That's
Hmm.
cool. I had one of my friends from high school did my logo. for the podcast, and that was a fun project to do. And she
Okay, I
went
was gonna say
about
I looked at
3 months.
your podcast art and I was actually very impressed, Ty. It looks nice.
Well, I did not do it. Emma did it, and she did a great job doing it.
She did.
And she has been a huge help with. We have. I just ordered shirts for the podcast, and so I'll be
Ooh.
selling those soon. But she did the artwork for that as well, along with a help from another friend who did like a super basic design, and then Emma made it look pretty. But
Mm,
my friend Adam had the idea for the artwork, and so I think the shirts look really cool. Hopefully, when they're printed, they look really cool. But we'll have to wait and
okay.
see.
Okay. I
But
want a shirt. I'll buy one.
there we go. Sweet. Eh, that'd be awesome. We have to talk about like ordering off a website or helping you the design of a website. That'd be cool.
Yeah, let me know when you need a website.
I might have to for this. I have a friend who opened Fargo Climbing here in Fargo. He was
Hmm.
on the podcast a while ago, and he said it'd be so much easier if you just had a website people could order off of than
Yeah.
having to manage it on like Instagram DMs.
Yeah. I know Chris. He's like friends with my sister. Is who you're
Okay.
talking about, Chris Steele, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have talked to him about a website too. So tell
There
him
you
that
go.
if he needs website help, I'm still here.
I'll forward it. I'll push them towards you. No, those guys are great. But what are like goals you have beyond like getting a new employee or maybe it's outside of business world? I know you guys do a
Mm,
lot of adventuring, it seems like. So,
yeah. A big goal of mine right now is to leave the country, which
okay.
sounds weird. But I've only ever traveled in North America, like Mexico and Canada. I've never
Hmm.
left. So that's a really big goal of mine for this year is to go on an international trip. But um, so that's a personal goal. Business wise, I think my goal is to just keep growing, keep meeting cool people, keep working
Hmm.
with good people. Yeah.
Right on.
Mhm.
Where would you want to go like, internationally?
I'm trying to go to Southeast Asia. Back when I graduated college, I had this whole like backpacking trip planned to go explore Southeast Asia for 6 months. But if you
Have you
rewind the
talked to
podcast
Skylar
a little
recently?
bit, yeah, Skylar's going there soon. But
Okay,
yeah, so
yeah.
then I had to cancel it because of graduation. So that didn't really happen. But
Gotcha.
hopefully I can do it again sometime soon.
Well, I know he wants to go there. He's trying to convince Fonny and I to go there, but
Oh yeah, he texted me twice today about it. But his timeline, like he wants to go in February, and that's just like that wouldn't work out. And
he
so
also has it like this massive trip of like flying here, then flying there, then traveling here, and I'm like, yeah, I can't do that.
maybe you should. He needs a travel buddy. You should go hang out with him in Southeast Asia.
I need to go see him in DC. He misses me,
He
but
does.
even though he was mad at me for a while, it's okay.
I
But
have
it'll
no
it'll
idea
be
what
all
you're talking
good. But I appreciate you coming on. We could probably cut it off there, and like hopefully, um, the business grows to something crazy, and then uh, have you on again.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, Ty Casey.
Well, I appreciate it, Izzy. You have a great rest of your day here. Thank you.
Bye.
Peace. Well, everybody, that was a great episode. And Izzy, if you listen to this part, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Everybody who listened this far, thank you for coming back for another episode. Um, I really hope to potentially do something with Izzy to create a website, to have a opportunity for the overall structure of the podcast be easily more shareable, more accessible, and then have a place to sell the shirts from. So I look forward to working with her here in the future. At some point, when once those shirts come in, I'd look forward to sharing those with you guys as well. Uh, Share it if you enjoyed the podcast. Rate it on Spotify or Apple. Those are the best ways to kind of get the podcast name out there. But I do appreciate you guys coming back for another one. I look forward to you guys seeing next week's episode as well. Thank you.